Hello there. Welcome to the Harley Carnes podcast. Harley on the headlines. It's a quick look, sometimes a bit of my opinion on stories of the day. You know, I never know what the day's going to offer. I hope there's something worthwhile in these brief visits for you and that you'll come back and help invite others to join us. That's what the like, follow, and subscribe functions are really for, and you know that already. And we found that a little word of mouth goes a long way too, so I sure do appreciate the help any way, anytime I can get it. He didn't want to do it, clearly. President Trump made his hyperbolic threat to end the Iranian civilization, by which he meant to take out the country's bridges and turn off the lights by destroying power plants. Well, this time they paid attention. Heck, the whole world was paying attention and believed him because he means what he says and he does follow through. Iran and the U.S. were also talking at the same time. Well, the Pope called for a 2-week ceasefire to give Iran one more chance to do the right thing. President Trump decided it's worth trying. Iran is certainly willing to have a break. It will be very interesting and important, I think, to watch. On one hand, you have the Americans, whose word has been good pretty much everywhere in the world for a couple of centuries. Time and again, the U.S. has stood for more personal freedom and liberty than any other major power on the earth. Time and again, we have ridden to the rescue of people who cried out for help against tyrants and against natural catastrophe. We've helped restore order and then spent our own money to help nations rebuild. And we are called imperial by the far left. America is attacked by the far left in our own country, and we try to debate the issues. Look, if America were an imperial power, the far left rabble-rousers would be rounded up and thrown into gulags to rot without due process or speedy make-believe trials. It's just not who the U.S. is or has ever been. Iran stands, on the other hand, tyrannical without debate, run by radical religious zealots who wrote into their charter a belief that Islam must rule the world and that Israel must be destroyed, and that the great Satan, which is us, the U.S., must also be destroyed. They rose to power 47 years ago in a bloodbath that threw out the Western-style government of the Shah, who was not exactly a paragon of peace and gentility, but who did afford his people choices, freedoms to express themselves, to be educated, and to prosper. The Islamist radicals have proven to be liars at the tables of negotiation. They've said whatever it takes to buy time so they can build the ultimate weapons of destruction, not to reach parity in power, but to actually destroy the infidels and to try to create Armageddon and lure the Messiah. I know, that sounds insane, but I don't make any of that up. That is what the Ayatollahs over the last few decades have said in their speeches. Their hand-picked presidents, going back to Ahmadinejad, have said exactly those things. Not once, not twice, many times. Now here's what's important. They still believe it. They still want it. They want to hold on to the enriched uranium they already have. Ask yourself why. So these next 2 weeks are going to be very, very interesting and, of course, important. It starts with reopening the Strait of Hormuz to make sure the world can get the 20% of oil and gas that sails through there. By the way, this is not for America. We have oil. The U.S. has more oil and gas and produces more than any other country. We produce more than we need, a lot more. The strait can be opened militarily, but that would be expensive and it would take time. Iran would sow mines like seeds in the waterway, and it would take time to bomb them into darkness, clear the strait, and create the international coalition that is needed to run it honestly, like the Panama Canal and other key choke points. The best bridges are built by people of goodwill who decide to be friends. We have politicians and activists on the far left who've been saying the war is going poorly for the Pentagon. They are a bunch of idiots. There has not been a war in modern times that has gone better, more one-sidedly? Not ever. This war against Iran did not display a single Iranian victory. They did shoot down one of our planes and damaged another one. But they started with a supposedly world-class military, equipped mostly by Russia, with state-of-the-art equipment, and a lot of it. The Pentagon took it out in 4 weeks. What we're dealing with right now are the vestiges, if you will, the dregs of whatever that system was. Iran has been driven to the negotiating table because what would be next would be immobility and darkness, and they know it. Here's what Iran hopes to get in negotiations. They've said this: continued control of the strait, which is code for allowing Iran to charge a couple $1 million toll or bounty for each ship they allow to transit. All sanctions lifted. U.S. withdrawal of forces from not just the country, but the region. Cessation of war, including for their proxy in Lebanon. And they want us to pay to rebuild Iran. That's what they said. Now, you may note there's nothing in there about a willingness to recognize Israel, to drop its theocratic and radical tyranny over their own people, or to guarantee that oil and gas will flow freely to the world, rather than try to hold the world hostage to the strait again someday. Nothing mentioned about ending its pursuit of nuclear weapons, or handing over the enriched uranium, or becoming dedicated to peace in the world instead of terrorism. Nothing about that leopard changing its spots. So, yes, it'll be interesting to see whether Trump's celebrated skills at making deals that provide a win for both sides can result this time in a win for the world in terms of positive, mutual direction and peace. In order to get there, you have to have two parties who are willing to share that goal. So do we have that? What do you think? Do you trust Iran? I think we put trust in those snakes at our peril. I think that any road that leaves that radical theocratic government in power leads to more trouble. The time to remove and replace with leaders democratically chosen by Iranians is now. Not people installed by Americans, but new leaders chosen by the Iranian people. That'll work. Now, if the oil and gas prices at the pump respond as quickly as crude oil prices come down as they did going up, things are about to relax at your local gas station. Crude oil dropped below $100 a barrel on the ceasefire announcement. If it holds, we should see crude back below 80 soon. And lower energy costs brings down the cost of producing everything and inflation with it. Now on to other matters. In Georgia, Republican Clay Fuller has won the race for Marjorie Taylor Greene's vacated seat in the House in Washington. He had gone into the runoff election 2 points behind Sean Harris. Then President Trump swooped in the late weeks with a strong endorsement and put the former Air Force lieutenant over the top. And Congressman-elect Fuller gave the president credit for that last night. Said the president was the most critical factor in his victory. Not close in the end. Fuller got more than 56% of the vote. In some blue states, the cesspool gets deeper. In Wisconsin, another election, this one for state Supreme Court judge. Yes, judges are political offices in many states. A woman judge, Chris Taylor, a liberal Democrat, won that election against a Republican-backed judge, which swings Wisconsin's highest court even farther to the left, 5-2. Check out Minneapolis, famous lefty city. There are new ordinances, 4 of them proposed, that would establish licenses, new zoning and health regs for venues like adult bathhouses, where sexual activity would be condoned, encouraged even by its approved legality. Any sex, whatever you want, would become available for a price legally in Minnesota, the fine city of Minneapolis in particular. In Washington state, capital city of Olympia, there is a proposal for an ordinance legalizing polyamorous relationships. In other words, legalizing sex with anyone you choose, even living that way as families. In other words, monogamy out the window. This is the way the city of Olympia put it on paper, the new law would approve and not be limited to the composition of interrelationships within a household, involvement in intimate personal relationships between consenting adults, non-normative and non-nuclear family arrangements, including multi-partner and multi-parent families, blended step families, multi-generational households, that's not bad, single parents by choice, chosen families, and similar configurations. In other words, pretty much anything goes. And made legal. I feel like I need a shower. You know what I mean? Fortunately, when you do look, there's always something to feel good about. How about Magawa? It's got nothing to do with politics. Magawa, the giant African pouched rat. He was smart and trained and more than any other pet. And in Cambodia, they have erected a statue to that rat. He's a hero to the nation. Here's why. Rats have a super sensitive smell, and Magawa was trained to sniff out the forgotten landmines and unexploded bombs of the wars there. In his career, Magawa successfully located more than 100 such devices and saved a lot of life and limb in the sniffing. He helped clear 1.5 million square feet of land, more than 20 football fields worth, which are now used for farming and for development. The carved stone statue is as tall as a man, perched on a pedestal, depicts the rat standing on his hind legs, wearing his collar and harness, and his gold medal of gallantry. Why do they use trained rats? Well, they're as good as dogs at detecting the explosives. They are light in weight. They don't accidentally blow themselves up like a dog or a human might. That's why. And this has got to be one of the coolest technologies to come out of the space program, like so many others before it. NASA acoustics engineers, sound engineers, knew how to put out a fire, especially when it's small. They turn up the volume and they shout it down. They use sound waves to put out the flames. Works best when the fire is small, so that's the goal. The new company is run by former NASA people, has come up with a new system. It's infrared, and it would detect any new fire, and powerful low-frequency sound waves that you and I can't hear would put it out. Those sound waves vibrate the oxygen that would feed the fire such that it doesn't burn, that the fire can't burn the oxygen. Deny the fire air, and you put out the fire. It's simple, quick, and efficient. It could replace sprinkler systems, zero water damage, fires that don't get a chance to grow bigger. They have a portable unit that can douse flames with sound anywhere, inside or outside. Next challenge, of course, is to learn to fight wildfires at the speed of sound. Guess that'll do it. Thank you for dipping into the stream, for tuning in, for finding us. I appreciate it. I hope you'll come back. Hope you'll bring some folks with you. Let's have a party. Keep our clothes on. You've given me a little bit of your time, and I sure do appreciate it because I know how valuable time is. I'm Harley Carnes. Until next time, please do yourself a favor. Make some good, conscious choices in your life today. Make a decision to be happy and fly safe. It's the only way to get there.